There's one thing that we all dislike. It is games journalists. They have spent years basically taking all of the reputation that they had and running it into the ground to push against not only gamers, but also against game developers that were looking out for the players. This week, we had an article come out of Jason Schreier inside the Dragon Age debacle that gutted EA's BioWare studio. And in this whole article, he's basically going on about how the thing that killed this game was a switch from single player to live service multiplayer back to single player. And that's not quite right, is it? So to start out with, my name's Ojiro. I've been working in games for a while now. I have a vested interest in making sure that the games industry is not falling over itself and bursting into flames, and it has been pretty bad as of late. In this article that comes out, he goes over stuff that Mike Dara is saying, and Mike Dara is an individual that's, I believe he's now retired. He worked at BioWare as one of the creative leads, I believe. What was his title at the time? Let's take a look at the executive producer was his role. Now, in this whole article, I'll link it below if you really want to read it. It's not particularly useful because it basically tries to paint this picture that the reason that this game failed was it was going to become this live service game, and then they switched it back to a single player game back in like 2021, 2022, whatever. All of this doesn't matter. And we all know that this doesn't matter. We have been going through this thing where we have had over time more and more journalists try and push this idea that the reason a lot of these games are failing is because of these other reasons. And, oh, it's just the market. Oh, it's because the people that wanted to buy this game, they were bullied into not wanting to buy this game. And, oh, it's because there are these evil gamers out there that are doing these terrible things and saying mean things. And we all know that in the case of Dragon Age of Veilguard, one of the hugest detriments to this whole game was the writing, the heavy-handed messaging going through this whole thing. We all collectively looked at a lot of these scenes and thought, this is ridiculous, this is terrible. And even if you wanted to get the game, maybe eventually, but for a steep discount, we had people, particularly in the games journalist side of things, that were attacking people for not liking the game. And what these journalists don't quite get, for whatever reason, is that when you start attacking people for not liking a game because it's got some heavy-handed messaging, all that you do is push more people away from buying that game later down the road. We've got a fantasy game where it's supposed to be telling a fantasy story, and the writers got the memo and they confused fantasy with delusion. That is one of the biggest reasons that this game has failed. Yeah, a lot of the stuff in the game is pretty uninteresting, but the writing and the way that a lot of the game design has been made around this to tell the story is not particularly good. They do not write characters that act like how people would act. It's just not there. They do not have the capability to do this. And when you have a story-focused game, it's extremely important to have a good world, to have writing in a way where it is as if people would normally talk in that world. One of my favorite types of games are visual novels. There is no gameplay to be had. It is pure story. And there's a lot of visual novels that have these fantastic stories. One of my favorite is Muv-Luv Alternative. It's like 40 to 50 hours long. Fantastic writing, fantastic world building. But then we look at these other games that are trying to come out modern, these modern games where they're like also trying to sell you with like, you know, all the time in the world and, oh, it's going to be such a cool tale. And then you start going through the story and you're just like, wow, this is just not good. The world's not good. The characters aren't good. Common thing is the Marvel like quips that people will put in, like you'd see in the early Marvel films where they're like, oh, we'll just say this line and people will think it's so cool. But the writers are so detached from reality in a lot of these cases where they just come off as terrible. In this whole article that Jason Schreier has made here, he talks about the writers all of 3 times, where some writers like, oh, it's difficult in these meetings. They also talk about how the tone is like not something that people are actually interested in anymore, because that style of video game storytelling, where they say the style of video game storytelling once ascendant that was quickly falling out of fashion in pop culture that had been part of this person's vision for the game. There are timeless ways to write stories. And if you have a writing team that's like, what's the hip new way to write things, you are immediately dating the story of your game. If you go in and you say, well, let's throw in all of these new hip sayings, and I think any of us that have watched anime in recent years with subtitlings has come across this, where someone has thrown some hip phrase into the subtitles of some anime that immediately pulls you out of the story, where you're going through and then some localizer is like, do you know what would be really funny if I throw this in here? Even worse, the ones that completely change the intent of what's being said to fit some crazy worldview. They are not doing it because it's what the people that consume the content want, whether it be in games or whether it be in anime or any other entertainment medium. These people, they just don't care. They want to get a pat on the back from the right people. And to them, they want to see articles come out where you've got these people that are insisting that, oh, this is such a great game because it checks all the boxes. But if a game doesn't check the boxes, they're going to attack it. Right now, Stellar Blade is recently hit like 183,000, I believe was the number, in terms of like the daily concurrent users on Steam. And a lot of people love it. It's overwhelmingly positive on Steam, at least right now. And you have game journalists that were attacking this game for being, oh, it's sexist, it's so terrible, it's like, you're awful if you want this, it's a Gooner game, instead of caring about what the actual fans want. Black Myth Wukong was looking fantastic, and a lot of games journalists wanted them to bend the knee. And then when they didn't, they came out with a hit piece where they just flat out lied throughout the whole thing. Mistranslations, adding lines into translated texts that don't even exist, that you could disprove by using your phone with like, you know, Google Translate, by sending a picture in, where it was like, this is clearly, there's stuff here that is not supposed to be there. And they don't care, because to them, their goal is not to spread news of the games industry. It's not to uplift games. It's not to help out indie games. It is to uplift their worldview that is unbelievably unpopular. And while people like Paul Tassi will say things like how the woke debate consumes online marketing campaigns and so forth, first off, I'm going to go again. If you've been here on the channel before, if not, then welcome. But I don't like the word woke because it's very different for the person that's saying it. You've got some people that'll say, oh, something's woke if I just like see a female. It's like, that's not woke. I consider woke in terms of when people complain to be heavy-handed messaging that takes away from the core storytelling components of a game. It is taking a world and injecting modernisms in it so that you can get those thumbs up from the right people. It's just not good. In the case of Veilguard, we had where it was like, oh, well, we're going to put in top surgery scars to be representative. And it's like, it's a world of magic. Why don't you just say, oh, yeah, there's magic that'll just change your gender? And no one cares. You've got that basically in Final Fantasy XIV with Fantasia. You get a few of those for free. You can buy them on the real money store and just become whatever, you know, gender or like whatever you want. And they just are like, yeah, it's a magic potion. It's effectively just a character change. You could do that and make it easy, but no, it was more important to have people like to pander to a certain audience, a microscopic audience in terms of the audience at large. And if you want to put these kinds of things in like an indie game that you're funding yourself, I think that's great. You make whatever you want in the space. A lot of great ideas go into really fantastic indie games, whether it be Schedule One more recently. We had, oh shoot, there was another that was just on my mind that I totally forgot, but don't worry, I will remember after I'm done recording this video, where they're fantastic. And everyone's like, wow, this is really amazing. Like one guy did it, or like, you know, small team of people. And if you want to do whatever you want to do, that's a great space. But in AAA, you've got hundreds of people where their jobs are counting on this to succeed. And if you're going to go in and you are going to ostracize a huge number of people from your audience so that you can pander to, like, a couple dozen people, on, not dozen, there's like hundreds of crazy people on Twitter, but it's just, you're harming everyone around you. And then when these journalists are attacking gamers, when these developers are going on Blue Sky to go on rants about how terrible other people are, it just, you are killing your own studio. You're taking a huge number of people where their families are relying on them to have steady employment. And instead of saying, hey, let's just kind of go and do what it takes to, keep selling this to people. And your response is, well, that's not important. We don't need those people. I think a great example is, was it Neil Druckmann, where between Last of Us 1 and Last of Us 2, he went off the rails and then was suddenly saying that if you didn't like his storytelling, which was really heavy-handed and bad, then you're a bad person, because for every bad person that doesn't like this, there's going to be 100 more that actually do, and they're going to come out of the woodwork and buy the game and, give it great ratings. And if you look at the ratings for the game, all of the games journalists were like, oh, so good. Oh, you checked all the boxes. This is fantastic. And the fans of the game, they were unhappy. It was supremely heavy-handed. The world building was bad. People didn't like this idea of feeling a bait and switch, where you went into this game thinking you're going to get one thing, and then suddenly it's like, oh yeah, this main character's dead, and you're going to play the person that did it for half the game. No. And then to have him go out and attack more people online to be like, you're all terrible people because, you don't like my bad story. It's bad. It's counterproductive. The only people, like, for the gamer side of things, like, we all have massive backlogs. We have great games that we'll go back and play sometime. So if someone comes out with something that's just garbage, you just don't buy it. You say, I'm disappointed. Or some people, they're not disappointed, they're angry to see a franchise that they know and love basically get dragged through the mud. And why? So that someone can do this virtue signaling and, get a bunch of backpats from, the right people. It's like, oh, good on you. You checked the box. You're such a good box checker. Whereas as fans, we look at certain things and we're like, wow, you have ruined, like, the legacy of this. If these franchises are ever going to like come back, like Dragon Age, you're basically going to have a team come in and say, look, we're just gonna, that whole game didn't happen. That's probably the best way for us to do the continuity. Or they could just say, yeah, it was bad, we'll skip time, different region, so that we can keep the storytelling and not have to worry about that. It's something that you shouldn't have to do if you were just caring about making a good world and a good product. Because even if everything else was the same and you just had writing that was good, people would have probably given a lot of it a pass. Because the world building and the storytelling was there, and then people would have complained, yeah, the story was great. It's really unfortunate that they switched from single player to live service back to single player. Everyone would have been able to look at this and blame the publisher instead of blaming the studio. But in this case, there's no one to blame but the studio. They had so many years to work on this. And to have people make these excuses to say, oh, well, no, actually, it's not that we were terrible at our jobs. It's we were actually quite good. It's just our publisher was very unreasonable in asking for these live service changes. And something that some of you, I know a lot of people disagree with this, where because I've seen YouTube videos where people insist that if a game team is not, has not used, made live service games in the past, that means they're incapable of doing it, and there's this huge debuff. These studios, they hire hundreds of people for these roles. They've got budgets. If you're told hey, I need you to make a game that's not quite in your lane, you hire the people to do that. And we keep having these studios make excuses to say, well, we were told to make a live service game, and that's why it was so bad. It was so bad because it was a live service game. You can make a good game and then add live service components to it. It is literally your job as a game developer. If someone says, I'm paying your salary, I expect this to be done, and you can hire people if you need to, then you just hire people. You had, especially as this was being developed, so much money was getting pumped into these game studios because stock price was going to the moon. No one could leave their houses, and they had all the resources in the world to bring on the people to do this. And instead, all we see in things like this article is, oh, well, we worked, we didn't like it, and it wasn't something that we were used to doing, and that's why it failed. It's not because the whole team was grossly incompetent in certain areas. You had a bunch of incompetent writers. You had a bunch of incompetent designers. There's so much there where it's just there's no blame for the live service side of things for this. The blame is these departments that were left to rot, and no one questioned them because it was a time where if you questioned certain things, you got fired and ostracized and blacklisted. And those times are pretty much over. We can all, at this point, look at things and say, hey, this is unpopular, and then not have like droves of people coming in and saying, oh, that person needs to be fired because they disagreed with something. Oh, no, you can't do that. And just to wrap it up here, one thing that I would ask for you guys is, as someone that's a game developer, I work in the industry. It's important for me for the industry to stay healthy. So what you can do for the games industry is to just continue voting with your wallets. You vote with your time, all those metrics, like everything's very data driven. So people are looking at these. We had, I read an article just today about how Jagex was moving away from pride events in their games because they're like, look, this is deeply unpopular given the current environment. A lot of this is deeply unpopular because you've got a lot of militancy in this thing, in this movement where people are increasingly disagreeing with it. Because people are all coming out and they're saying we don't like these things, and they're voting with their wallets, they're voting with their time. You guys are doing a fantastic job. More of this needs to happen. We will see more games coming out that have been in development for years where the game teams are living in a bubble. And that bubble needs to be popped. Whether it's a $400 million pop like in Concord, or whether it's, some mediocre AA game that comes out and it's just, super heavy-handed garbage. You just say, hey, look, I don't like this. This was not good. And over time, the investors that are putting up their money are going to start saying, I don't want all of these things in the game. Because for a while, they were the ones that were pushing for a lot of this, because you had activist investors pop up and you had this huge movement where it was like, oh no, we have to do these things. Like BlackRock was pushing for a lot of DEI departments through their ESG related stuff, where it was like, you need your ESG ratings. Here's the fix. Hire your sweet baby inks. There you go. You hire this company here as a consultant. And the only thing those groups did was they came in and made things worse. So if you guys could continue doing what you're doing, I would super appreciate it. The Western games industry is in a terrible spot right now. It's going to take years to recover, at least on the AAA side. Keep an eye out for indie games if there's something that you like, and support those teams. Or just play your backlog, and don't this thing where a lot of people insist, oh, well, you have to support these games or else. Like, no, you don't. It's your time. It's the most valuable thing that you have. Spend it however you want. If you want to go back and play another, Total War Rome 2 campaign, and like, have at it. I'll go back and play a bunch of older games like Total War, Shogun 2, or, play a lot of old stuff because it's great. It's not filled to the brim with microtransactions. It's just a game and it's all there, and that's fantastic. So And also, if you guys could roundly ridicule any game developers that say that stupid, or journalists as well, that say that stupid thing of like, well, if you don't like this, then that just means that you're not going to get it in the future, as if somehow they're entitled to your time. Like, that's just such a stupid thing for people to say. It's really such an eye-rolling thing for me to read. But that's all for this for now. I am done ranting. I'm sure I've ranted for far too long as usual, but I appreciate your time, and I hope you all have a good weekend at this point, or middle of the week if you're watching this in the middle of the week. Whatever. Farewell.